Resident Producers Program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh, everyone. I'm Cheryl Hentz, along with former Oshkosh Mayor and City Councilwoman Melanie Bloechl. We had intended to have on this edition of Eye on Oshkosh State Representative Cheryl Owens, the Republican candidate and incumbent from the 53rd Assembly District, because our previous show that aired featured the Democratic challenger, Stephen Dito. We did receive a phone call just shortly before coming over here that Representative Owens is tied up down in Madison in the Assembly, and it looks like it's going to be a very late night. Her staff person told me that they would probably be working into the wee hours of the morning.
And we've heard of some of the important legislation that's going to be coming
Well,
down.
there is some stuff that is pretty major down there. So, nonetheless, Cheryl Owens is not here, obviously. I'm not her, and nor are you, but we will, I have her rebooked, tentatively anyway, for November 13th. So that will be upcoming in November. So Melanie and I have been left in the unenviable position of having to do another viewpoint for this evening.
Winging it.
Yeah, because it was, in 20 minutes you can't really get a guest to tape a show. So here we are.
It's us.
So on these issues or editions of Another Viewpoint, as you folks know, we just sort of talk about good things and bad things going on in the community, in the state, in the nation, in the world, whatever seems to...
In our house, in our neighborhood.
Well, let's not go that personal. One of the things that has struck me as being very, almost laughable recently is, now we're taping this on October 23rd, and at the council meeting, the city council meeting 1 week prior to this, there was an issue that came before the city council, and it was to eliminate parking on Brockway Avenue on the south side of town. This is a 30-foot wide street. It's currently, during the non-snow months, it allows parking on both sides of the street. The proposal, and this apparently was initiated by a couple of neighbors, or one neighbor in particular. The proposal was to eliminate parking on the north side, or to permit parking rather, on the north side from Doty Street to Oregon during the months of December, January, February, and March. So in other words, there would be parking on both sides of the street all year long. Now, this evidently has come about because you've got two neighbors bickering with each other. What the council did, at the suggestion of Councilwoman Shirley Maddox, was she gave this little spiel about the neighbors going to mediation, and she made a motion that this particular resolution that was passed, by the way, or approved and recommended by the Traffic Review Advisory Board, to lay that over for, I believe, 6 weeks.
6 weeks, right.
And send the two neighbors to mediation to try and resolve this issue. Now, I'm sorry, Mel.
Shirley.
We just, on the last Another Viewpoint that we taped, gave her thumbs up, kudos, and massive pats on the back for not so much her vote on the proposed smoking ban in Oshkosh restaurants, but her well thought out, very sincere very wonderful, really passionate explanation as to why she was voting the way she was voting. And then she turns right around and does something like this. Now, if you've got neighbors who are bickering back and forth, and I'm sure
Welcome to every neighborhood in the free world.
Exactly. I was just going to say, at some point or another, I think we all have been or will eventually be at that point.
Sure.
But the decision as to whether or not parking should be removed comes down to changing a city ordinance. Now, the charge of the city council is to make ordinance policy. I mean, it's to set policy on ordinances and municipal codes. First of all, to send people to mediation, the city council has absolutely no authority to do that. To the best of my knowledge, only a judge can order someone into mediation. And no one on the city council that I'm aware of is a judge.
No.
So, so the bottom line here is there were only two people on the city council, Paul Esslinger and Brian Peschel, who did not vote in favor of laying this change over.
Or remediating people to arbitration.
Sending people to mediation over at the courthouse. I mean, if this is how we're going to resolve, I mean, look, this was an ordinance change that was being proposed.
Mm-hmm. Why limit it to ordinance changes? What about zone changes?
Well, here's my thought. This was a proposed ordinance change. When the smoking ban was being proposed,
very good point.
That would have created a new ordinance.
Correct.
And that would have affected by far more people and was much more of a controversial issue.
Community flavor-wise.
Oh, absolutely. Why were the two parties, being Breathe Free Oshkosh, the two principal parties, Breathe Free Oshkosh and the restaurateurs, why did Mrs. Maddox or anyone on the city council who voted for this preposterous decision, why did they not order all those people into mediation? And they could have crowded room 60 at the courthouse, in the courthouse basement. When Walmart went into your neighborhood and you neighbors didn't want it, why, and that was another ordinance change.
It was a zoning change.
Well, but did it not affect wasn't there an ordinance change that went with that, or was it strictly zoning?
No, it was strictly zoning, and the difficulty with that is that a building that had previously used that spot was a low-density building like a church, which had been there for 20 years with the promise of staying.
Right. But you folks weren't ordered
Oh, I can guarantee you we were not happy people, and still are not happy people.
And you weren't ordered into mediation, though, were you? I mean,
I think they were afraid to take us into mediation.
I mean, this is ridiculous. Talk about abrogating your responsibility.
Oh, yeah, it's. I couldn't agree with you more, Cheryl, and I think your point is really well taken with the Breathe Free Oshkosh and the restaurateurs and the tavern owners. That was definitely far more cumulative, its effect on the community, than a singular neighborhood issue. And the charge of the council is to look at the issue. The participants in this really are of no consequence, and I don't mean that to be disrespectful. You certainly listen to both sides of the story, and you take from that relevant information. You know, not I don't like Betty and Betty doesn't like me or whatever.
Right.
You take what's relevant from those arguments and you use them to set policy, to put in place procedures that is in the best interest of the city as a whole, which this neighborhood happens to be a part of. The difficulty that I see with this is just, it really isn't all that difficult. It's a 30-foot street.
Correct. And in the winter months,
Yeah.
I mean, the reason I'm sure why whatever council decided to go ahead and put this ordinance into effect in the first place was because it is only a 30-foot wide street. And in the winter, you have snow that, look at Jackson Drive until they don't get it plowed. That is a tremendously wide street. And until they actually get it plowed, you've got basically 1.5 lanes going in either direction, north or south. this is far too narrow of a street to have parking on both sides of the street.
And we have a
year
lot of those.
round.
We
Yes.
have a lot of streets like this in our community, and that's with, some of the difficulty when I was on the council. Discussing street widths became such a big deal because we knew that streets like Bent and Brockway and those like that were the limitations by virtue of its structure, not even by impending snow or anything like that, but by virtue of the limitations of its initial structure and the way that some of the older neighborhoods are set up. We had significant restrictions and safety issues. I mean, these are real, honest-to-goodness safety issues. And I guess I'm really disappointed. I mean, I'm disappointed that there's only 2 council members that have enough common sense on the entire council to see that ordering or suggesting or laying over until somebody goes to mediation was the only logical response for them. Is so frightening because, this is Pollyanna politics at its worst. I mean,
And feel-good politics, too.
Well, you're absolutely right. Abrogating your responsibility serves no useful purpose than to delay the inevitable because you're still going to have to make a decision on this. Now, what I see happening is you're forcing 2 parties to be even more confrontational than what they probably originally ever hoped that they would have to be. And not only that, but Cheryl, what do you think the chances are that folks who are going to come before the council to discuss issues in their neighborhood are going to want to do that freely and not be concerned that they too will be ordered into mediation?
Well, order, I think, is the wrong word here, Mel, because you can't, here again, the city council cannot, or not even the city attorney or Dick Wolink as city manager, no one in city government can order these neighbors into mediation. And according to Paul Esslinger, who's on the city council, neither of these parties wants to go to mediation.
And again,
and so it's going to be a waste of time. Now, I guess I understand what Mrs. Maddox was trying to do. I think Shirley was trying to, she's a big neighbor proponent, and that's great because we need more of that. But sometimes you're just going to have neighbors who just, for whatever reason, don't get along. And not only that, why didn't she say something to the effect of, I mean, I guess if I had been sitting up there, it's fine to want people to work out their differences. And, something to the effect of this could have been said, you two obviously have differences that go far beyond whether or not parking should be allowed on both sides of the street 12 months out of the year. I would encourage you to sit down with each other or perhaps go to mediation, because mediation, the Winnebago County Conflict Resolution people do an outstanding job. They do phenomenal. Christy Bradish and her staff of 50 or 60 mediators, they really are wonderful. If you can't work things out yourselves, I would encourage you to go to mediation, but this is a proposed ordinance change. This council has a charge, and that charge is to handle this and make a decision on it, and we are going to do that.
Well, and congratulations to Paul Esslinger and Brian Peschel for moving ahead and doing what needs to be done, and that is to, not support this fluffy stuff that, talking about bogging down the system, and like I said, neighborhood disputes, it's like when people would call me and they'd say, this guy built his house up too high and, all the drainage is now coming into my yard. There must be something that you can do about that. Well, no, there's nothing that I can do about that. I mean, there's every plat is laid out differently. The grades are laid out differently. If this becomes an issue of erosion or damage to your property, it's a civil matter. Mm-hmm. You must go into court. If the city council members are going to find themselves in a situation where they are perpetuating themselves as peacemakers, they're not going to get a lot done. They're just simply not going to get a lot done. And I understand wanting to resolve issues to the fullest extent that you can, but there are just some things that are not within your purview. and personalities, and it would be like if a developer came to you and you said, yeah, it's a really crappy development, but he's an awfully nice guy, let's do it anyway. You know, I mean, it's kind of that kind of mentality. Either it's good for the city and it produces the results that you're looking for and moving in the proper direction, or it's not, and it has nothing to do with the parties' personalities that are involved.
Exactly. So, you know, I still believe that Mrs. Maddox gave a beautifully written, well thought out, very impassioned speech on the proposed smoking ordinance, but this one,
Yeah, baby steps.
This is bad. This is bad. It stinks.
It's set a precedent that I don't think any of them are prepared for.
Well, and I can guarantee that when they come back in 6 weeks, that council is still going to have that same decision facing them. And I'll be very curious to see if the two parties involved actually did attend mediation.
Well, I think it was an embarrassment to them more than anything.
Well, it's like scolding little children and saying,
Yeah.
now, you know, go to your respective corners and come out when you can work this out.
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
when
it's
you've got it worked out, or I don't know, whatever. But I just
because the council doesn't want to be the bad guy.
thumbs down on this one.
Yeah, we agree on that.
Big time thumbs down.
Cool.
But speaking of smoking and so forth, you know, during our last Another Viewpoint, we had given some kudos to Jeff's on Rugby, Phil and Lisa Levine, for immediately, like within a day or two of that smoking ban failing, starting to offer Thursday nights as total smoke-free nights in the entire building. There are some other restaurants that apparently are trying this now, and George's Gaslight Inn happens to be one of them. And, you know, we certainly didn't mean to overlook them the last time. We just simply didn't know about it. I went in there last Friday, and, you know, Friday fish. You got to have
Gotta
fish
have
on Friday.
with George, you betcha.
And I happened to see just a computer-made sign on their door that says that they're now offering smoke-free dining. Now, you can, and that's every day of the week, you can still smoke at the bar. And so if you're a smoker and you want to smoke while you're eating or immediately after, you can eat at the bar. Or they have, I don't know how many tables, would you say? Maybe 8 or 9
yeah, I'd say.
along that
back wall.
when you first walk in, and it's in the same bar room, or the same room
I
as the
like
bar.
that they make tables available for you, so you're not, you know, I was just in Applebee's the other night, and they didn't provide any, like, tables, even though, like, directly behind me, I mean, I'm smoking up at the bar and trying to eat tequila lime chicken, okay? And the plate's almost as big as the bar, and directly behind me there's an open table, which you know darn well, the smoke was wafting over my head, so, I mean, it wasn't like I couldn't have sat at that table, but they didn't permit it. So I think that, you know, I think it's wonderful that these places are looking to accommodate as many people, as much diversity as they can. But, you know, let's not overlook the practical application of that, because, I mean, you don't want to jam like 900 people at the bar with, you know, big sizable hot plates, you know.
Well, and besides that, if you're with a group, you know, I guess if you're just with one other person or even 2 people, and you can have someone flanking you on either side, that's one thing to sit at the bar and talk. But, you know, if you've got 4 or 5 people who want to go out to dinner, it's not very practical.
No, and even with
sit
a
at the
couple
bar
of
and
people
try and eat.
flanking you, it's not particularly practical because both of them were lefties and I was a righty. So you can imagine the cutting. It could have been bloodshed everywhere, plus a hot plate. It was just awful.
You need like a personal
So the
cedar.
smoking wouldn't have gotten to them. It would have been the sharp utensils, you know.
So anyway, you know, I think the point needs to be made that there are restaurant owners out
They're doing
there
a great job,
who
and
are
they should be
trying
commended.
to do this the right
Really,
way.
really good job.
And, you know, again, I would hope that Kathy Propp and her Breathe Free Oshkosh people would not pursue this at the referendum level, because obviously all it takes is some edification of the restaurateurs. And
Some
they will
decent
come around.
communication.
Had
this been communicated on a level of concern with respect to both parties, this could have been happening a lot longer ago
sure.
than this, because as you can see, there's no referendum now. They listen to their consumers. They wanted to respond. They want to see how it affects them, and they want the choice to be able to choose what's in their best interest, as both financially and from a physical structure standpoint, what they can adapt to. I think all of them who have really worked hard, and even those who chose not to. That's the
their
beauty.
choice.
That's the beauty of our system.
Correct.
So, hey, I've got something for you.
All right.
I had something that happened today. I went over to the Titan Shell station on Sawyer.
Sure.
On Sawyer, and is that Eagle? I have to stop and think. I'm directionally challenged, so it's not my fault. And went there right around, I'd say probably the lunch hour. Had to get some gas, and there's some offices that I visit during my workday. And I pulled in, and I have to tell you, I was absolutely mortified and appalled at what I saw over there.
Oh, now we have not talked about this. Are you talking about huge mobs of kids?
Yes. Oh my Lord! It was.
Yeah.
These kids were screaming, and I don't mean just being a little excited because they're out for lunch and they get out in the car. I mean, banging music to the level that was deafening. You had elderly people that were trying to go into Morton Pharmaceuticals to get their prescriptions, which is right in that strip mall. You have a chiropractor's office, you have JJ Liquors, which is an ice cream store and whatnot. All of these facilities run right within that mall, which I'm sure the audience is aware of what I'm talking about. And these kids are flying in their cars through these parking lots, slamming on brakes, taking up parking lot spaces, screaming at the top of their lungs, using profanity that, and I'm no prude, because God knows I have had to, but it was actually...
It's offensive.
Not just offensive, it was intimidating to those older people that you could see that they were like watching over their shoulder because they didn't know when these kids were going to come ripping through the parking lot. If the school system, and the reason that I bring this up is because I've got all these newspapers here, and I apologize I don't have them in better order. But in one of the newspaper articles, they were talking about where the school board members are floating this idea of granting an open lunch hour, an open hour during the day that the kids don't have to be in school, be it for work or whatever, due to performance. Well, I will tell you, and I don't want to say that all of these kids were bad kids. They just obviously had some behavioral issues without their parents around or the confines of school. But if this is any indication of what we can expect, if this is granted, all I can tell you is this is absolutely the worst idea I've ever heard. Personally, I don't believe in an open campus anyway. I don't think that when you go to school from the time you're meant to be there till the time you go home. You should be eating lunch on campus, and it should be a controlled environment for these very reasons. This is absolutely the most ridiculous, dangerous thing that Titan Shell and some of these other business owners are not absolutely ranting and raving about the behavior. The only thing that I can understand is that these kids have a lot of disposable income and it's a great revenue source, but the people that will steer away from that, and I'm telling you, I'm not elderly and I wasn't going in for pharmaceuticals or whatever. I was looking at this like, if there were 2 more carloads of kids like this, I'd be out of this parking lot so fast it'd make your head spin. I wouldn't spend a dime in these places.
Well, the reason that I kind of knew where you were going with this, and you and I, frequently we talk about things like this, but this is one that we hadn't had a chance to talk about yet. But the reason that I knew kind of where I thought you were going with this is because I saw it last week. I pulled out of the credit union and was wanting to get gas, needing to get gas. But when I pulled out of there and I saw,
Throngs.
Dozens.
Throngs,
yes, of kids, it behaving like that. I mean, I'm not worried about them attacking me in the middle of the day or anything like that. But it's just, do you want to be subjected to that? Because they're rude and they're nasty in many cases. Not all of them, but some of them are.
It was awful.
And I left. I did not stop there. I went to another gas station. And the thing is, I like Titan Shell.
Mm-hmm. I do too. The people there are very, very nice.
They're friendly. They're nice. They've got a nice selection of stuff inside.
Right. But they really, honestly, I know that Greg Lindsay, who's the liaison officer over at West High School, does go through that parking lot, because when I've gone to get gas, I've actually seen him and stopped and spoken with him while he's, he really does try to stay on top of that. But I have to tell you, school board members really need to go over there and see what those of us who are working and living and trying to do business on that side of town are being subjected to. And certainly the intimidation factor to elderly folks who are going in, who are not well, who are not moving probably as quickly as they would like, more or less the kids would like, and these cars ripping in and out of here. And I don't mean, just going a little fast. I mean in a parking lot from a dead stop, tires spinning, squealing, and you don't know which direction they're going to go in. And people are trying to cross to get to these businesses.
Well, maybe it's not just a case of the liaison officer going down there and breaking up the posse. Maybe it's going to take the people from Titan Shell.
Absolutely.
Because it is in their parking lot. It's not, and I realize it's one big parking lot, but it's in their portion of the parking lot. And right up against the sidewalk is where I saw these kids.
Yeah. Well, they were up against, right off to the side by JJ Liquors. They were right in front of there, and then literally were consuming much of the parking lot just off to the side of the pumps by the gas station. And the screaming that was going on, and the one kid was like running around in circles, and I mean like a chicken with his head cut off. And I mean, these were older kids. These were older high schoolers. These weren't freshmen that just figured out they got open lunch, and honest to God, I was actually a little timid in pulling out of that parking lot, because I didn't, you can't anticipate if you got a kid running around in circles and hopping around like his butt's on fire. You don't know if he's going to step out in front of you or not. And I'm thinking, oh my God, just what I need. Hit a high school kid in the parking lot of the Shell station,
Lawsuit.
Well, and
former mayor sued for mowing down teen.
Hood ornaments everywhere, the bodies. And then, I'm watching I felt so bad for a couple of these elderly people, because you could tell that they were having some difficulty with their mobility, so they were trying to park closer to the building. And the closer that they got to the building, you know how you can kind of park along the front end of Morton's. Yeah. The closer that they got to that front parking area, the closer the kids got. They were shoving down that far.
I think it's going to take some cooperation here between the school district, or the school, and the businesses and the police. But I would think that if the businesses would call the police and say, hey, we've got a loitering problem here. I mean, this is loitering. That's what it is.
And if the kids just wanted to hang around and, sit on their hoods of their car and drink a pop or a hot dog or eat an ice cream cone or whatever, and they were in a relatively respectful manner, not the screaming and the hooting and hollering. I mean, I got to tell you, the bass on some of, you've driven up next to those cars, boom, boom.
Listen,
they're
I've
in the
heard
car.
It, in my home in the middle of winter, with every window in the house buttoned up tight as a drum, and I can hear people's bass from 5 blocks away.
Now, do you often wonder, like I do, if it's that loud over here in my car, how they have to have hearing loss at some point?
No, there are studies now that are coming out that the study actually didn't talk about people who play music loud in their cars, but that's got to be part of this as well, I would think. But study, I just read about it last week. People who in the 70s and 80s were attending
the rock concerts, so we would get as close as we could to the speakers.
They are now having hearing loss problems. So, so there is a consequence to things like this. And I realize, kids are kids. They're not going to think about hearing loss problems.
They'll be sorry someday. They think it's all.
Our cameraman's getting a kick out of us.
Well, you know, it's really funny because you don't really think about that stuff because you think you're indestructible. I mean, you really do. When you're that age, nothing's going to touch you, and you know nobody's going to hurt you. And then all of a sudden, you wake up one day and you're 43 and your knees are gone. You know, you just don't understand why when you go to get up off the couch, they won't move.
Yeah.
You know, or that your hair went a funny color overnight. You know, you used to be this raven-haired person, and the next thing you know, it looks like lights twinkling out of the top of your head.
And it wasn't done intentionally.
No, this is God's tipping plan, Cheryl. This is a cruel, cruel joke.
Well, you know, let's hope that the folks over there in
I
that
hope they
strip
do, and
mall get together with the police and
like
do
I said,
something.
I'm sure, and I probably saw the worst of the worst, and maybe there were kids there that were just very well behaved, and you know, you always got that group that's going to make it hard on everybody, but then the kids have to help us, you know, as far as policing themselves and saying, hey, this is who it is or whatever. And of course, you don't want to get into that whole narc thing, but it really, from a consumer standpoint, and I know the kids are consumers as well, but from a consumer coming there, these businesses really need to take a more proactive stance in, you know, being out there and policing some of that stuff. Because honestly, I thought somebody was going to get plowed over. I truly did.
Well, and you know, along with that, Mel, is, you know, most of these stores in and around the campus areas for the high schools, they will post signs that say, you know, and it varies from store to store. Some they don't want more than 2 students in the store at one time. Some it's maybe 3 at one time. But, you know, they want to make sure that they don't have this huge congregation in the store so that they're not subjected to it and customers aren't subjected to it. But it's no different, really, in the parking lot.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, we beat that horse to death. But I got to tell you, that just really bothered me. Did you see this thing in the paper? This is like the weirdest thing.
what thing? You've got a lot of things.
I've got
there,
a lot
dear.
of stuff here, and they're, like I said, and I apologize, it doesn't look very nice. Normally I have it all cut up in notes.
Which thing are you talking about?
I saw this in the paper, and you know, I cut it out, and I didn't write a date on here, which is unusual for me, about the illusionist that was taken out of isolation, and he was like 50 pounds thinner than what he was. This is a guy that was in London in the like plexiglass box being dangled. It's the weirdest thing you've ever heard. Some guy, a New York magician, after 44 days of isolation in a clear plastic box. Now, who in God's name would put themselves in a clear plastic box for 44 days? How do you go to the bathroom? Well, he didn't eat anything. He was 50 pounds
no,
lighter.
but your body still produces something, at least in
Well,
those initial days.
Well, yeah, and you're in a clear plastic box hoisted up above something in London?
Well, they must have had some kind of gizmo worked out that he could.
Well, I think the
relieve
gizmo
himself.
wasn't working so good up here. I mean, it talks about how he was taken out of this clear plastic box, which, by the way, was suspended by a crane over the Thames River after living on only water since September 5th. He was taken to the hospital. No kidding. and they show a picture of this guy. I'm not kidding you. He's like this. You know.
Here, let's see.
You got it. I mean, it's just, and he's got like an oxygen tube in his nose, and he's all wrapped up in one of these thermal blankets because I'm sure there's no body fat left on him. It all melted away in the plastic box with the sun shining on him. He must have been just like a big old thing of butter up there, just, you know. But I'm thinking, okay, I understand PR because that's what I do for a living. And the guy's a magician. I can't even say it.
Illusionist, yes.
An illusionist, which, boy, oh boy.
Maybe it's only an illusion that he really lost the weight.
Well, or it's an illusion that that he's actually out of the box. But, you know, I understand all that self-promotion stuff, but to the detriment of your actual physical body, you would put yourself in a plexiglass box suspended by a crane for 44 days and like there's like no political point to be made. He just
Well, look at the guy who in mid-October jumped over Niagara Falls or into Niagara Falls, whatever. You know,
like
with
all
just
by himself. No,
yes, with just the clothes on his back. He just jumped, and he survived.
You know,
what
they
is
say
wrong
they're
with
not all
people?
locked up. I really believe that now. I see this kind of stuff, and I'm looking at this picture and I'm thinking, God, there must be really something wrong with me. Because I'm looking at this picture and thinking, oh my gosh, this poor man, what happened to him? Because of course, it's a titillating picture. And then I start reading the captions about how he did this to himself, and I'm thinking, you are so dumb.
Well, see, now you're wondering what happened to him. And other readers might have wondered also what happened to him. There are some people over in the District 26 who are wondering what happened to their Winnebago County Board Supervisor.
Ooh, good segue. That was good.
Well, there is a supervisor in District 26. His name is Scott Tierney. Now, District 26 represents part of the town of Menasha, and also part of the city of Appleton that extends into Winnebago County. I know that sounds a little weird, but I actually have a friend who lives in. She's got a mailing address in the city of Appleton, but she lives technically in Winnebago County, in the town of Menasha.
Well, it's kind of like
It's just kind of weird.
town of Algoma people who had, it's an Oshkosh.
Sure, but they're at least all in the same county still. I mean, Appleton isn't even the same county.
I see what you're saying. It's split.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird. But in any event, the guy's name is Scott Tierney. Now, Scott Tierney won a election on a coin toss.
There you go. There you go, Cheryl.
In April 2002, when the election, Muriel Crowley had previously had that seat. Health reasons prohibited her from running again. She made the choice not to. And so Tierney and another gentleman ran for this open seat. And they had a tie vote, and so they settled it by a coin toss. And he won the coin toss. So he took office, and he has missed, and there's more than 4,000 voters in this particular district,
Wow.
District 26. Now, he has missed, does it say in here? And I did some research on this too, but he has missed the majority of the county board meetings since he has taken office.
Does he give a reason?
Yes, he works nights.
Because I don't want to go?
No, he works nights, and he has a family to feed. Now, that's noble that he has a family to feed, but, and I wrote something about this on our website, which we're going to talk about before the show ends, too.
Okay.
Not what I wrote, but we're going to talk about the website. Because
we're talking about
we're talking about what I wrote right now.
Okay, so he works for a living, and he's got a family to feed. Okay, that's like all the rest of us.
And he works nights.
Okay.
He works nights.
Did he work nights like when he ran?
Well, we don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Maybe the Northwestern does. I don't know, and I don't care. What I feel is, if he worked nights when he ran, what in God's name was he doing running for county board? Because he should have been apt enough to know that they meet in the evening. That's when the county board meets. And if he didn't work nights at that time, but his work shift has since changed, he owes it to the people in his district to resign his post.
I agree.
And I mean, this is a historic pattern with elected officials from the town of Menasha. Not all of them, by any means, but a number of them who have served or presently are elected to serve, but apparently not serving since they're never there.
Or getting coin tosses in their favor.
Yeah. I mean, we should all be so fortunate. This is just not right. I mean, he's had 9 absences between this year, and we're taping this in August.
We're taping this in October.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Cheryl missed a couple of months because she had to work.
No. I'm sorry. I feel foolish now. I'm looking at August here, and I said August, but no, we are taping this in October. I have not entirely.
You want to make sure you're apt.
Well, if it were August, we wouldn't be wearing long sleeves.
That's true.
No, I've taken temporary leave of my senses, I think.
That's because I was poking fun at you, and you get a little jostled.
Yes. But, I mean, really, it's great that he's feeding his family, but then he should resign his post.
Has he done that to this point, or haven't we heard?
Has he resigned?
Yeah.
No. no.
Well, you act like that should be a surprise when that's exactly what we're expecting. And if the Northwestern wrote a story about how unacceptable this is, wouldn't you think that that would spur people in his district to call him out or call upon him to do, quote unquote, the right thing?
Well, I have called upon the people in the town of Menasha to either, I mean, if he's not going to do the job, then they need to go ahead and put someone else in that position who will.
Does he get paid whether he's there or not?
It's paid per diem, so he's not drawing a paycheck from the county when he's not there. But
Which
see,
is really not the point.
Right.
I mean,
I don't think that's the point either.
although it could become a point if you were getting paid whether you're there or not.
Yeah. Well, see, there used to be a town of Menasha supervisor. He served on the board of supervisors for the town. And this guy, what this guy did is he served on the utility district as well as the town board. Now, the town board actually got paid a salary, much like you all did on the city council. And the utility district got paid a per diem. So what Bob Sprague would do is he showed up, and it was really funny the way he did it. He'd show up for the utility district meetings. So he'd collect his per diem. And then as soon as that meeting adjourned, and just before the other one started, he'd leave, saying,
And he got paid anyway.
well, sure. He collected his per diem for the utility district meetings, and he still got his salary as a town board supervisor. And, he had a friend who served as town board chairman, so no questions were ever asked. No issues were ever raised about it. They have provisions in place that they could have fined him, but they never did. And this went on for the longest time. And it only stopped, and this is a little pat on my back, but it only stopped after I wrote a newspaper article about it, and it was published. And the town's residents took note of it and said, hey.
Lit their tiki torches and went
Yeah.
looking for him, did they?
Yeah. And
Good.
And he did not seek re-election.
It's kind of hard to do when you got like a whole article printed on what a schmuck you are.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, but I don't think that, obviously when you're in elected office, you're going to miss meetings from time to time.
Well, there are times that, you
can't
get
avoid
sick
it.
or someone
you're
in your
sick,
family's
a family
sick.
emergency, you're on vacation, you do have to work, whatever. But I mean, he works nights. He works evening hours all the time. It's not like he just happens to be working overtime. And his quote, I don't know, this quote, and I understand the newspaper could have just printed it this way. He maybe had more to say, but the only quote that they had here was, "I have a family to feed. It's just that," unquote. Well,
As do I,
Yes.
as do you.
so Mr. Tierney should perhaps resign. It's just that simple.
I have something.
Okay.
In the paper on Wednesday, there was an editorial written by the newspaper staff, my favorite guys, and gals. There's a gal in there. Can't forget the diversity on the newspaper. And it had to do, it was just bashing Gene Vandehey's brains in here. It talked about the county. The headlines read, Vandehey's County Magic Act Clumsy. And basically, and I'm going to paraphrase because I know how we are about paraphrasing, but I do have the article right here in front of me, so accuracy is very important to me.
Well,
And I want to make sure everybody takes me very seriously because I know I'm passionate about what I have to say, but I want to make sure accuracy is of paramount importance. Where I'm going with this is, it talks about that they beat Jane's brains in because in her proposed budget, she talks about taking some reserve funds and plugging the hole in the budget. There is going to be serious budget issues, and I know I'm beating a horse here that's probably really hobbled and lame by now, but I just have to because this is not going to be the last time that we have a budget session and cycle that is going to be this devastating to our communities. So there's serious budget issues at a county and city level. I'm trying to plug the holes where the legislators took our shared revenue away. So one of Jane's ideas, and it's a proposal, it has not gone to a full county board vote yet, but it is a suggestion made by the executive, Jane Vandehey, that they take some of this revenue, reserve revenue, and they plug some of these holes and still be able to provide services at a level that people want, okay? And the editorial proceeds to just say that, basically she's being disingenuous and, this is a bunch of malarkey, and if she really understood the spirit of the property tax freeze, this would not be something that she would have done. She would have made the tough choices and cut services, certainly wouldn't have put more people on the payroll. Okay, those are legitimate concerns.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's interesting that these same gentlemen in an editorial as of Wednesday, October 22nd, were pounding Jane to a pulp about a proposal that she's made. And our city mayor, Steve Hentz, not too terribly long ago, in an op-ed piece, which just means that he was given the privilege of writing 750 words about whatever he thinks, and his issue was the concerns of the city budget and what they were going to do to plug their holes. And because, of course, this came right on the heels of the fire department potentially losing one of its stations or cutting back on people, all the different services that could potentially be cut. And one of the things that Steve Hentz said in his op-ed piece was, one of the suggestions that he's going to be making during budget is to plug the holes with, guess what? General obligation money. It is going to be the general fund, which is the same thing that Jane's talking about doing, and hers is called the reserve fund. Ours is called the general fund. They serve the exact same purpose. They're there to do the exact same function. And when a male mayor, which by the way the Northwestern seems to like,
Yes, I was just going to say that.
They like him. Gives, and this is weeks prior to Jane coming forward.
Yeah, it wasn't all that long before this.
That when Steve Hentz came out and said that this might be a proposal, and he would certainly, be the lobbyist for the council members to suggest this. There was no retort. There was no response. There certainly wasn't any character assassination about clumsy magic or asinine behavior. But when Jane Vandehey, a female county executive,
who they historically have not liked,
that every chance they get make a crappy cartoon and smack her around, that seems to warrant just a tyrannical response, bold letters, and more than a half a page in an editorial. I guess I just don't understand it. Same thing, two different people, two different forms of government proposing the exact same thing, and Jane's a jerk and Steve seems to be okay.
It's attaboy Steve.
Well, and that's what I don't understand. If this is Steve's idea is a dumb one. I mean, you can't. It's like what the legislature has tried to do with the tobacco money. They stole from Peter to pay Paul to plug a hole that is going to come back and be even bigger. They know that they've misprojected revenues in the state budget next time. And you can call me Chicken Little, but I'm telling you, it's going to be there again next budget cycle. The next biennium, you're going to see it and it's going to be worse. But I guess I guess I would expect, actually I demand as a consumer, more equity. Equity in opinions, equity in if a man says something stupid, you beat his brains out every bit as much as you're going to beat up the women.
Sure.
And
I think that's reasonable.
Well, and it's so ridiculous because it's like, hey, Steve, let's go out to lunch. And, anytime you've got a concern, why don't you come over to the office, says Kevin Doyle to whomever's in charge. But, they don't want anything to do with Jane because, well, she wears a skirt.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating. It's just irritating. They didn't like me either, Jane.
No, they beat you up pretty good.
That's okay, because I had cast iron cannolis.
Well, and they've slapped me around once or twice.
See, that's why we're such good friends, is because, you can take it.
Well, I don't put up with their crap. I mean, they took me on a vote that I made as a member of the Board of Appeals.
Yeah, you were like almost the Antichrist there for a while, weren't you?
Yeah, well, they tried to make me feel that way, but I'm sorry. And Tony Palmieri from Commentary, he gave me an opportunity to, put forth every single reason why I voted exactly the way I voted. And I did that, and I think it's still buried on his website somewhere in like the 4 questions file or something like that. But it's still archived there. And, I stand by my vote, but they beat me up. And they only printed one tiny blurb of what I said.
Oh, welcome to my world.
They did not give the real reasons why I turned the project down. But
Well,
anyway, that's
But see,
it's
this is
selective
things like
reporting.
this. Well, it's not just selective reporting, but what they don't understand is those kinds of smacks at people who are not elected. They are appointed, they volunteer for these organizations that we are in desperate need of in the city. I mean, anybody who's interested in participating in the city of Oshkosh, these are great opportunities. I mean, you really do learn a lot. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that maybe you won't like too, but I'm telling you, the trade-off is that the experience and the knowledge that you gain and the insight on how things are done is so incredibly helpful.
It gives you a much better and greater appreciation of what really goes on in city government.
Yeah.
And you're right, I have learned things. And,
Well, you also learn who the mover and shakers are, so that's always a lot of fun.
And I would like to see more women serving. I mean, I had served on the it's been so long since we ever had a meeting, and now it's the Citizens Advisory Committee, and
Wasn't that disbanded though?
yeah.
Yeah.
And one by one, they started taking away the things that we were doing, and yet Steve Hentz came to our meeting a year ago saying, "Oh, I've got great hopes. I'd like to get you guys," because we only met 3 months out of the year, pretty much, and we originally made a lot of decisions that were affected by community development block grant money, where a lot of that money was being allocated. That was taken away from us and given to a private party. And
that's like one of my biggest...
I know. That was taken away from
that.
us by a council decision. And, and so then it just kind of seemed like we really didn't have a real purpose.
Well, you didn't have a charge anymore. What was your charter? Nothing.
But Steve Hentz, as mayor, came to our meeting last year and said that he wanted to get us involved in other activities, and he apparently never did that because just a month or two ago, the entire Citizens Advisory Committee was disbanded, done away with.
Well, there's your other activities. Do something else.
And you know what? In addition to that, not a one of us, not that I'm doing this because I want a pat on the back or kudos, but the city council or someone in city government, when the city council actually voted on this to do away with it, I think they should have sent out a letter to every member on that board saying, thank you for your X years of service. Here's why we did what we did. Give us an explanation. Nobody told us that this was happening.
Really? Because normally they do that. I know.
No, we were not given any notice, and unless you look at the agenda for the city council, you wouldn't have known it.
Wow.
So, pretty bad. A couple of things that I want to mention. You folks may have noticed we've got a new opening for the show.
Yeah, it's really cool. You got to watch it.
Well, they'll have to watch it next
Just watch
time.
it closer.
Yeah.
That's all.
And
Cheryl does all that techie stuff, not me.
no, I worked with Andy Raddick from OCAT. We spent a few hours together a week before we're taping this, and we put it together. But I really,
cool.
I have to thank Andy. Andy Raddick, who works for OCAT, is just phenomenal. And he came in, he stayed late one evening, and on his own personal time, worked with me on this, and I really like it.
It turned out very, very good.
It turned out great, and so thank you very much to Andy. We appreciate it very much.
And we have to mention that all of our staff people that support us here and put up with all of our nonsense went through all these classes. They're all certified.
Yep.
Our Joseph is running all these cameras and trying to make us look good. That's a job and a half right there. Everybody in the control room, I mean, when they did the whole changeover and modernized everything here, which, by the way, is really fantastic, these support staff people and our friends who help us out putting on the show really stepped up to the plate, learned all of this
Yes,
really
they did.
techie stuff. So, you know, we are really fortunate to have such a great group of people backing us up. I mean, you know, if you're going to have people watch your back, that's the group. So no funny business back there, you guys.
Well, Joseph Sontag, Dustin White, and Mary Helen Van Dyke have been with us from day one.
Yep.
And then when we started up again after the 3 or 4 month hiatus while the whole facility here was being remodeled, Darlene Hengels joined us, as did Nick Gergella.
Yeah.
And so we've got a 5-member crew. Each and every one of them is wonderful, and we could
They're
not.
a lot of fun, too.
We could not do this without each and every one of them. So we thank them. I know we thank them a lot, but it's deserved.
Well, you know, and we also beg for forgiveness a lot, guys, right? Because that would be me, because they have to sometimes write things down on paper for me that I can't say anymore.
Time's running out. I think we're down to 3 minutes, Joseph tells me. But
Real quick, can I just say that we have Aurora Hospital is opening this coming weekend. So when this comes out, well, this won't probably show in time, but Aurora's new hospital is opening October 25th.
So when this airs, it will have been open about
It will
a week
have
or
been
two.
open, and the open house is going to run from noon to 5. Also, Festival of Foods is going to be holding a trick or treat for kids October 25th, that same Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Of course, this show will air after that is over.
So by that time, everyone will have had a safe Halloween and a happy hospital opening.
That's right. And I just want to mention very briefly also, along with some of these other new things that we've got going on, we have been, myself and our webmaster, we have been developing a new website. And if you go to the website, www.ionoshkosh.com, on the left-hand side of the page, you will see different links, and there'll be a link there called Community. Now, that is not for information about the Oshkosh community. That is an interactive online community that when you click on that, there'll be a little couple paragraphs to read, and then you can go to it. We're going to be having more and more articles on different things posted there. The audience can submit articles or things of interest. You can participate in online polls. There's only one there right now, but we'll be changing those over the course of time.
Don't be afraid of it. You just got to play around with it a little bit, too.
And you can make up a username and a password for yourself. You can look at the stuff. You can read the things on there without having to log in. But if you want to participate in the polls, or you want to post any responses to articles that have been written, or you want to submit anything yourself, you will have to give yourself a username and a password. And once you're logged in, you never have to log out again. So it's been set up that way. Anyway, that is going to do it for another edition of Another Viewpoint on Oshkosh. And so coming up on November 13th, we will be taping some shows with Dick Spanbauer, who's running in District 53, as well as Carol Owens, if she can make it, and she's the current assemblywoman there. So thanks very much. You take good care. We'll see you next time. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.